Waterfall, the CCW podcast.
Hello and welcome to Waterfall. It's the water saving podcast brought to you by CCW. We're the Consumer Council for Water. We represent everyone who drinks water throughout England and Wales. What are we all about, Cath, on Waterfall?
Oh, water saving, Mike. It's water saving tips. Save yourself some money, save yourself some water, save the planet, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Now that was Cath. Cath is here. Hi, Cath.
Hi.
This must be terribly confusing because last week you're presenting, now you're here as the co-host.
It's like a merry-go-round of podcasty, waterfally goodness.
Well, that sounds like a merry-go-round that I want to be on.
Wait till I'm producing.
Well,
don't worry.
To be fair, we've not had that yet, guest producer. That's because we've got the one and only immovable. It's Tom. Hello, producer Tom.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Mike. Hello, Cath. Great to be back. That's all I want to say. It's great to be back for another episode of Waterfall.
Oh, yeah? Any comments on this particular combo, Tom, that you'll regret in future episodes?
Yeah, I don't want to step in. I want to, Cath obviously knows that it was meant in jest, what I was saying. And she's a very valued member of Waterfall.
It is lovely to have Cath here, and it's always lovely to have you here. So we got a fabulous episode lined up, actually, because this is an explainer episode where we're going to look into something that's actually really important. And we're looking into why do you get low pressure and sometimes supply interruptions when it gets really hot. Now, we know that this has been something that people have been experiencing at the time of recording. It's June. It's been pretty hot. We know that some people have been interrupted for quite a few days because of this. So we're doing an explainer. So it's well worth listening to understand what is going on. Now we're going to kind of keep this non-technical. So you've got the right people for non-technical.
Very much.
But we've got a great episode lined up. Now, don't forget, you can get in touch with Waterfall. We have an email address.
Yes, we do, Mike. We absolutely have an email address, and that is, producer Tom.
It's podcast@ccwater.org.uk.
And I did note the complaints on the last episode about the choice of Twitter handles and Instagram handles. And I have to say, I did realise all you need to do is put in Waterfall Podcast, search on that on Instagram, and you search on that on Twitter, and you'll find us. So you don't have to get too confused about whether it's pod or podcast.
So we don't need to know that Instagram is waterfall_podcast and Twitter is waterfall_pod.
No, you don't. You just need to write Waterfall Podcast and click enter, and we will appear in all our glory.
Another top tip.
So there you go. So please do get in touch. We do love hearing from you. And actually, on that note, we have heard from Alistair again. Now, if you recall, Alistair had written in a couple of months ago now, talking about the benefits of having cold showers. Now, there's multiple benefits from having cold showers. One, you keep your showers short because it's cold. Two, you're going to save money on your water bill and on your energy bill because you're not heating the water and you're obviously using less water. There's lots of health benefits too. It's good for your muscles. Apparently, it's good for your circulation. It's good for your immune system. So lots of benefits from having cold showers. I mean, the big disbenefit is you're having a cold shower, right?
It's a cold shower, yeah.
So I've been trying this for May. I haven't been doing it in June. And Jimmy, to be fair, I actually did quite enjoy it and walked away. Anyway, Alistair's followed up his initial suggestion for this, which has an interesting sidebar, which relates to the history of American prisons. And this is what it says. So Alcatraz, which is the prison, which is an island in
off San Francisco.
Yeah. Alcatraz was the only federal prison at the time that provided hot water showers for the inmates. But the motivation wasn't humanitarian. Prisoners were given hot water showers because, and the reasoning goes, that they would then find the frigid water of San Francisco Bay almost impossible to withstand during an escape attempt. So there you go.
There we go. It's not the rocks that put them off or the massive underclothes, or it was the cold.
But let's note this. That is another advantage of having a cold shower. If you're ever trapped on a prison that is an island, then you will be in good form to escape in those cold waters. Anyway, right. We have a really great show lined up. It's a really serious show. So without further ado, let's get on with the explainer.
What would you like Waterfall to cover next? Send your water-saving topics to podcast@ccwater.org.uk.
So today's episode is an explainer which delves into why do we sometimes get low pressure or even a loss of supply when the weather gets very hot. And as we said, some people have already seen this year. Quite a lot of people in some parts of the country saw this last year as well, because obviously we had a record-breaking summer in terms of temperature. So we want to drill into this to understand what sits behind it.
Yes, we do. And I think one of the first misconceptions out there, especially as it's been so hot and dry lately across England and Wales, but very much in the southeast, is that we don't get as much rain as we used to. So there isn't enough water for companies to access. Basically, we've run out of water. Is that right?
Now, that's absolutely right. That's a misconception. In cases like this, there is enough water to go around. And that is not what's driving this. And interestingly, we have heard this being put out by some water companies. And when you look at the stats, there is plenty of water. I mean, look at the southeast for the period from November right through to May. And I was looking at this last night, actually, because I'm that sad. I was looking at the rainfall, and actually, the southeast, which obviously is one of the drier parts of England and Wales, actually had 135% of the average rainfall in places, and all of the southeast got more than 100% of the average rainfall. So, when you think about the times when rivers and streams and lakes and groundwater and all that stuff recharges, that's during the winter and the spring. So actually, winter and the spring, 135% of rainfall. So there is enough water to go around. So, I mean, the real issue is that when the weather gets hot, the demand spikes, and water companies then have to provide a lot more water to meet that demand. But in some cases, their infrastructure just isn't up to the job and just can't get water treated, so cleaned up, and then pushed through the network to get to where it's needed. And that's the real issue. So it's the treatment capacity, and the capacity of the pipes and the pumps and all that good stuff. Now, I like to think of this as the loo rolls at the start of the pandemic. Do you remember this, Cath?
I do. Getting down to my last 2 loo rolls and thinking, what am I going to do?
Yeah, well, were you one of these people that were hoarding the loo rolls?
No, I buy a standard pack of 9 loo rolls and I wait until there's a couple left before buying more. And I stuck to that, but I genuinely, first world problems, I really was thinking as I got down to those last 1 or 2, my solution was going to be to come into the office and steal the loo roll.
Okay, so again, we're not going to this theme of criminality.
Yeah.
But at the start of the pandemic, there was this huge demand for loo rolls, and they were flying off the shelves. And then, of course, the shelves got empty. Now, during that period, there was actually enough loo rolls. They were just sitting in warehouses, and people couldn't transport the loo rolls from the warehouses to the shops fast enough to meet demand. And that's kind of what's happening with the water in these situations. There is enough water. It's just that they can't get it through the treatment works, through the pipes, and to people's homes and businesses. So it is very similar to the loo roll rush at the start of the pandemic. There was enough loo rolls and there is enough water.
So what can companies do to prepare for that?
Yeah, I mean, you can't help sometimes but be a little bit sarcastic. You go, companies shouldn't really be surprised that in the summer it gets hot and then demand increases. But what companies do need to clearly need to plan ahead. They need to then also understand customers and customer behaviour and what people want to do with the water, and also understand their networks, understand where the pinch points are. And usually there's early warning indicators. So they've seen problems before in certain areas, so they know which parts of their network they're likely to see problems. So which bits need expanding, which bits need renovating, etc., etc. So the other thing, of course, companies need to do is think ahead and accommodate growth. And when we say growth, I mean, that's a very water sector term, growth. They mean new houses being built, right? And more people living in areas. So they also need to make sure they plan ahead and make sure their network can cope with the extra people living on their patch. So, I mean, we see problems sometimes occurring in rural areas, and you can sort of see the scenario unfolding. A village may have 1,000 people. This is, 50 years ago. And the water company put in a water treatment works, and they've got a service reservoir. So that's a covered reservoir. of treated water. It acts as maybe like a balancing tank that holds about a day of water. And the advantage of having service reservoirs around your network is that if there's, say, a problem with your treatment works, they've got a day's worth of capacity in there. So you've got a bit of resilience built into to those service reservoirs. Now, so that town was, let's call it Little Big Town. Little Big Town, then so Little Big Town grew, and instead of having 1,000 people, it now has 5,000 people because of, just over time it grows. But if that service reservoir hasn't been expanded, then instead of having a day's capacity in there, it's now maybe only got a few hours of capacity. Now, clearly, when demand gets really high, like you see in those hot summer days, then that service reservoir is going to drain down a lot quicker. And then you can get in trouble because it's basically undersized. It doesn't have enough capacity. So companies have to accommodate growth. They have to plan ahead. They have to look at the pinch points on their network. And really crucially as well, they need to kind of work with their customers to help them use less water. And I choose my words carefully there in terms of working with their customers, because it's not about telling them or blaming them. It's about actually helping people understand why using less water is important, like we say on Waterfall, and making it easy for them to use less water. So, giving them widgets to help them save, or free water bots, or whatever. Again, all the sort of stuff that we go on and on about in Waterfall. So working with alongside customers so that they're gladly using less water, not grudgingly. And I think that's a big issue, because no one wants to do something grudgingly, do they?
No, they don't. And I think what you've just said about that, companies should see this coming. I think somebody once said, maybe a former king, that a British summer consists of 3 nice days and a thunderstorm. And that might have been the case going back, years, but that's not what we see anymore. And I think you're right in that some of the goodwill is being lost from our customer bases, because we do understand that water is a precious and finite resource. We do want to use it wisely, but then sometimes it feels like the companies aren't showing us what they're doing to prepare. So from what you're saying, they actually are doing things. They're being agile. They're considering population growth. They're looking at how they can store more water, get more water processed, get it out to us, and make sure that those networks are resilient. But perhaps we don't hear about that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily hear about all the good stuff that's being done, but we certainly are made aware of the bad stuff that happens, because you cannot honestly, hand on heart, say that all the companies are doing all that stuff you've reeled off, because you're seeing these problems materialize. And the other thing is, I liked your quote, was it 3 hot days and a thunderstorm? It's summer. I mean, our climate is changing, but again, this isn't a surprise. You can look at, I was looking at this the other day, Ofwat's climate change policy statement from 2008 quite clearly flags the issues that we're seeing now. So it's not as if it's suddenly, oh, blimey, getting hot and demand's going up. What shall we do? So this is, I think it's really important people do understand what their companies are doing, Cath, as you said. I think companies should be doing more to help, take their customers with them, so that they understand how they're investing their money. Because, we all want to know our money is being well spent, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. We're paying for a service, and then you want to see a good service for that payment. So what can people do then, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, we've just kind of touched on this a bit about, being careful with your water use. But it isn't just about being careful with your water use when the company's in trouble because it's a hot day. It's about being careful with your water use all year round, valuing water. As you said, it's a precious resource. And that's one of the key themes that we flag on Waterfall, that actually it's not about what you do for a few days a year. It's what you do all the time. It's those habits that you form when it comes to water.
Enjoying the show? Please consider leaving a 5-star rating on iTunes and Spotify.
We do need to understand, what are the alternatives? So, for example, on Hot Summer's Day, what could you do instead of, filling up your Olympic-sized paddling pool? And in fact, we do have a heat-beating tips episode of Waterfall. In fact, it's our 3rd episode. We've got loads of tips in that one about what to do. So instead of filling up your paddling pool, why not have a water fight? That's a fraction of the water. Although there is the issue of single-use plastics and balloons, but that's a great alternative. For example, if you've got kids and you want to keep them cool, that's a great thing to do. So there are alternatives, and that can just take the edge off that peak demand. But I do think it's about just considering your water use all year round. And I think there is an emphasis back to the companies to talk to their customers all year round, because our research has shown that customers are quite cynical about companies that only approach them to save water when the company needs something from them, i.e., we're in a bit of trouble here, guys, with our network or with water resources. So we need you to do something now. So people will much rather do their bit if their companies talk to them all the time about this, and not just when they're coming to them saying, "Help! I need some help from you." So I think there's some learning points there.
I think that's a really good point. As you say, it's a bit like a dog isn't just for Christmas. Water saving isn't just for hot weather. But then equally, we tend to use more water when it's hot weather because we're hotter. So we probably drink more water. We probably take more showers. We probably water our gardens. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't do an awful lot with houseplants or gardens across winter because they don't need me to. Whereas at this time of year, I do take the washing up water and go and tip it on the garden. I leave the last inch or so in there because equally I don't want bits of last night's rice going onto the flower bed. But, I can use that water differently. I think to try and avoid having a shower when I'm boiling, especially if we're at home where, it's lovely in the office where you've got some air conditioning, although you could argue that's part of the climate change problem. But you can put like a cold flannel on the top of your desk fan and that helps get a bit of cool air across you, hopefully, keeping your room a little bit cooler. Or at least I find that works. Same as if you stick a bag of frozen peas in front of it, it just blows cold air at you. So cutting down on the need to have showers, which is excellent. And I do like, I don't know if this is factually true in any way, so perhaps don't quote me, but I find if I can cool off my feet and my wrists, it makes me feel better all over. I don't know what that is. So I find if I run a basin of water and I put my hands and wrists into it for 5 minutes, I feel loads better. Could be psychosomatic, as I say. It's probably just...
I've heard this.
Oh, have you?
I mean, I've heard this. I always thought, is that just someone, like an old wives' tale? But, I'm not calling you an old wife.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
I know Tom loves it when we plug other episodes, but you did an episode last week, Cath, with the Royal Horticultural Society, which was just full of tips to save water on those hot days.
Wasn't it just, in the garden, of course, a place that lots of us love to be if we're lucky enough to have that outside space in hot weather. So we were talking about the obvious choice of using a watering can over using a hose pipe. We know that hose pipes use loads of water, about 1,000 litres in an hour. And that's a family of four's water use for 2 days. That's crazy amounts of water. And I can promise you, I cannot fill up my watering can enough in an hour to use that kind of water at all, So you can instantly chop your usage down there. And the RHS explained to us things like if you take the rose off and just use the spout for your plants, it gets the water more economical use because it gets
the rose
right
off your watering plant, not the rose off your...
off your roses. Yeah, I mean, do deadhead. That's probably good advice as well. That isn't water saving. And we also talked about, and this was probably my favourite part of all of it, Mike, mulching. Mulching is actually a top tip for the garden. It retains moisture in the soil. It means that when you water your plants, the soil doesn't all splash up around it, so it doesn't disturb the roots, keeps weeds down, keeps slugs, my personal nemesis, out. So there's so many good things about mulching. And final top tip, don't mow your lawn. Let it grow longer, not just no mow May. Leave it there. The longer your lawn gets, the longer its roots gets, and that makes it more drought resistant.
So that's plenty of ways in which on those hot days you can save your water use without actually, making any sacrifices, really.
Absolutely. They're all things to do that give you back a bit of time. So there is something, Mike, that I would say it can be, well, we've touched on this a little bit, I think, but with the goodwill that people haven't necessarily got left towards helping their companies because they're struggling to produce water or because they feel their reservoirs are low, whatever that reason is, we ask customers to voluntarily reduce their usage. Sometimes on social media, I do see people commenting back going, well, I pay for it, so I'll just use what I want. Why shouldn't I? Is there anything we'd say to that attitude?
Yeah, and you know what? I see that too on social media. You see it in some of the complaints that we get as well. The escalated complaints that CCW deal with. There's a lot of frustration out there. And if you've been without water on hot days, you're going to be cross. I mean, that's completely understandable. And so people, I think, have every right to be cross and frustrated and angry, especially if you had no supply. But I think in terms of whether you should be bothered to cut down your water use or not, I think we need to take a slightly different perspective actually, because if the water company is struggling to keep the taps running because their network isn't up to it and they're asking you to save water, I would try and disassociate that from the water company and actually think of it. If I do my bit now, I'm going to keep the taps running, not just for me, but for my neighbours, for my friends, for the school, for the local hospital. Actually, by doing my bit, I'm going to help all those people. So forget the water company, right? I can do that because actually I'm doing my bit for all those other groups. Actually, there are people who really need to have the water supply. So I would really try and encourage that mindset. But I do get, the annoyances out there because, I've got 3 kids. There would be a riot in our house if we were without water for a few days. So I absolutely get this. And I do think also, back to our recurring themes of waterfall, it's a good thing to save water. You can save some money if you're on a meter. But there's a cost of living crisis. That's got to be a good thing. You can save on carbon emissions. That's a good thing. You're keeping more water in the natural environment. That's a great thing for nature. You're helping combat climate change because you're adapting to climate change and you're doing your bit to reduce carbon emissions. So, all these good reasons why water saving is a great thing too. And again, if you're fed up with your water company, disassociate that, right? Think of all these other good reasons, and there are loads and loads of good reasons.
And I think that thing about it, how it's you're doing it to actually help other people, not the company. So the company's asking you to save the water, but you could turn every tap on your house on and say, well, I'm going to pay for it, so I'm not going to listen to you, Mr. Company, because I'm really annoyed. But actually what you're doing is you're using up the water, which means it's not going to go further down the pipe, and you might have somebody a mile up the road who consequently has no water whatsoever. So it is more about being good to your neighbours more than being good to the company.
And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of great water companies out there that are doing all the right things. They're working with their customers, they're empowering them, they're helping them to save water. This isn't just about, it's easy sometimes to focus on the people who are cross. But actually there's lots of people, and we know this because we survey people, and we know that the vast majority of water customers are actually really happy with the service they receive. And they trust the water company, and they're going to be inclined to do their part because they appreciate what they get from the water company. So it's not all bad news here either.
No, it's true. And I think we should highlight that even in changing climates and new scenarios, water outages are actually pretty rare. I think where I live, and I've been there for 20 something years, I have never had the water go out for a significant amount of time. And I think that's most people's experience, is that water's pretty reliable.
I'll sneak round and start playing with your local hydrant.
No, don't do that.
We can soon put you out of water.
A couple of weeks ago, South East Water announced a hosepipe ban that's come into force this week. I think it'll be the previous week when this episode goes out, for parts of Sussex and Kent.
Yeah, so sorry, Cath, it's important just to know. Yeah, so we're recording this, and it's what's the day? It's the 27th of June. The hosepipe ban formally started yesterday.
Yes, 26th. Yeah, that's right. And it is for South East Water customers, as I know parts of that region actually cross into Portsmouth Waters area and I think Southern Waters area. So it's South East Water. And on their website, there's a postcode checker if you're not sure if you're their customer and affected. So do go have a look.
It's our Kent and Sussex areas, right?
Sussex and Kent.
Yeah. Because they cover some other parts too, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yes. So it is worth, as I say, if you're not certain if you're included in this, don't go put your postcode into their online checker, and that will tell you.
We'll put that in the show notes.
There's also some really useful FAQs on there about things that you can and can't do, exceptions that apply, and answering some questions. So again, go have a look if you're affected. But this is all about reducing that peak demand for water that pushes the company's system to the limit. It's pretty unusual that they're using a hosepipe ban for this purpose. Normally, we see hose pipes coming in like we did last year, 2022, when there's been a drought. So has anybody else ever applied for a hosepipe ban?
Do you know, that's a really interesting question, because I don't think there's ever been a hosepipe ban because of this particular scenario where there's actually enough water, but it's the company's network and treatment capacity that's the issue. So yeah, this is one of a kind, and hopefully it will stay one of a kind.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, as you say, it's definitely an unusual scenario. So it's not a drought. It's actually all about that peak demand and reducing that down, as we said earlier, how much water a hosepipe uses. So it's certainly an effective step in reducing that demand. Do you think this is a taste of things to come?
Well, I really hope not, because, hosepipe bans, I don't think should really be used in this way, because really this is a sticking plaster that covers up issues with companies' networks. And I don't think a solution to network issues in the kind of medium to long term is to say, I know, customers, let's slap a hosepipe ban on you every single summer. I don't think that's a sustainable solution. And really what we want is, as we touched on earlier, we want companies to adapting to climate change and building resilience so that they're going to be used to coping with the hotter, more extreme temperatures. They're looking at their network. They've got the right capacity in place. They've identified those pinch points. And of course, alongside that, working with their customers to take them gladly into a place where they're using less water, not grudgingly. And I suppose if that's the kind of theme here, it's about gladly doing things, not grudgingly doing things. And of course, it does feel like, the hosepipe ban is guaranteed to make people a bit grudging because you're imposing something on them, whereas gladly taking them along on a journey is harder work, right? It takes more investment in that relationship with people. But I think that's got to be the future, because you know what? If you look long term, we've all got to, water's a finite resource. There's going to be less of it around because of climate change, and reducing our demand for water is going to be part of the solution. So that, we have to acknowledge that. And there's going to be a lot of work needed to help people use less water. But we do know that it's not a sacrifice, right?
Absolutely. It's a simple thing to do. It doesn't have negative side effects. And it does ensure that there is enough water. That's a really interesting point, though. I'm pleased it doesn't sound like the way that things would go in the future. I think it would be unfortunate if, instead of us changing our behaviours willingly because we see the benefit, it ended up because there were bans, legislative bans with potential fines for disobeying happening, across summer. Where does it end? I mean, that we're spiralling into a dystopian nightmare there that we won't get into for this episode.
CCW, passionate about championing the best interests of everyone who uses water, now and in the future.
Wow! Oh, I feel exhausted, grilled by Cath there.
Like the Paxman of the water world.
Well, someone's going to have that mantle. But look, the whole point of this episode was it is an explainer to help people understand what is going on and why our water supplies would either be interrupted or have low pressure when the weather gets really hot. So I suppose actually the test here is, let's ask a civilian. So producer Tom, how did you find that in terms of an explainer? Did it actually explain anything?
It really did, actually. And I'm not just saying that because I'm slightly frightened of Cath now.
Yeah, me too.
Episode. No, but in all seriousness, it's quite a fraught situation, isn't it? It's not what you think it is on the surface. And I definitely felt enlightened by that. And I hope our listeners did as well.
No, good stuff. Look, we've got plenty of resources out there to help people if you want to find out more. We've got one of our early episodes of Waterfall was myth busting on hosepipe bans. So that is an interesting episode that I think people, if you are affected by the Southeast water hosepipe ban, check that one out because it's packed full of information. We'll stick a bunch of stuff on the show notes. So Cath, you referenced some of the useful information that Southeast Water's got on their
website. Yep. And we've got the whole Save Money, Save Water page on our website, which is jam-packed full of water-saving tips for in the home, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, in the garden, as well as loads of other really useful resources to have a look at, like a water meter calculator if you're not on a meter at the moment, see how much your bill could be with a meter. which also helps you be aware of your personal water use. So lots of information there.
Great. So we'll stick all those on so you can find that more. And don't forget, if you have any questions, you can always get in touch. You can email us at podcast@ccwater.org.uk. But look, we're running out of time. I always think the explainers would be shorter episodes, but actually we've run out of time. So thank you, Cath, for stepping in and joining us. Always nice to see you back.
Thanks very much, Mike.
So running out of time. That's it for this week's episode of Waterfall. Thank you, Cath, for your grilling. So it's goodbye from me, Mike.
Goodbye from me, Cath.
And goodbye from me, producer Tom. Don't forget to mulch.
Pressure!